Hello, I'm Cormac. You're listening to Queerly Beloved, supported by Amazon Music. In this series, I invite DJs and musicians, friends, and allies from the LGBTQ community to talk about music, queerness, and anything else that shaped their unique story. Today's episode is the second of our live episodes from ADE, recorded in 2024, this time with the powerhouse that is BASHKKA. As a DJ, she's a resident at Blitz Club in her hometown of Munich, Raum in Amsterdam, and Hamam Nights in Berlin. Those are three killer parties. There's something infectious about BASHKKA's music, this driving percussiveness that speaks to her time spent in the New York ballroom community. I really love her sound and her, and it's wonderful to see her get the recognition she deserves both as a DJ and as a producer. You can find a playlist for all the music mentioned in today's episode and every episode at the link in the episode description. So here it is. Please enjoy my conversation with BASHKKA, live from ADE. It's been a little while in the making. We've been talking, I guess, on and off for over a year about finding the right date for BASHKKA. And then when ADE Live came up, I thought, what better guest? Without saying much more, I'm going to begin my chat now with BASHKKA. And I will start it as I start with all of my guests. I want to ask you to introduce yourself so you can tell us who you are, how you identify, and what it is that you do.
Hello, I'm BASHKKA. Artist, producer, DJ, singer, songwriter, you name it. I identify as human first.
Yeah, good start. Actually, when we did the podcast with Peaches, she identified as a fruit. So everything's possible. We're talking about music, we're talking about queerness. Can you tell me where you grew up and if music had much of a role in your growing up?
Absolutely. Born and raised in Munich to a Turkish working class family, immigrants. Basically, I'm an immigrant child. And yeah, music was the center of everything in our household, I would say. You know, as far as I can think back, I was surrounded by all types of music, but mostly, of course, music from my culture. You know, when I was a child, I would say. You know, because of my parents, of my grandparents. I'm third generation, so my grandparents, they used to live with us, and yeah, I was exposed to like a lot of music. Like I have a very musical family, even though none of them are musicians, but yeah, music was the central part of our entire connection with, you know, family things.
That's so interesting when you say like it was the connection of family things, because as I grew up, as you know, I guess is typical for all teenagers, but also as a queer person or the only queer person in the family, I became very aware of the differences between me and my family members. And the thing that always kind of brought us back into some sense of connection or celebration was music. What do you think music gave you when you were a kid?
Everything. I mean, that's everything, point. Period. It was so much. It was escapism. It was finding myself. It was joy. It was sadness. I mean, every emotion that you can think of, you know. And yeah, it was the thing that shaped me very early on as someone who then later in my younger life was like, okay, this is something I really want to do, and I, you know, see myself in doing.
Yeah, I love it. I think sometimes the queer perspective on music is really amplified, and we see that through history as well, through kind of times in clubbing and producers and styles of music that have changed the direction of the electronic music industry and the scene. I think some kids get video games and some kids get into music. I was always kind of poring over the back of records and disappearing into that fantasy. And it's maybe something I miss a little bit about pop culture now is, you know, the mystery because we have access to everything, but getting into the character of whoever it was on the record and diving into that fantasy world, I think it became a bit of a lifeline for me. I mean, what kind of, you said like Turkish music, and can you think of a record maybe that sums up that time of being a kid growing up? We choose 6 records, so this would be record number 1.
Yeah, it's actually the first record. It's by an artist called Bülent Ersoy. And I was just fascinated by her as a child because I could feel something in the persona and in the voice that I could identify with. To give a little backstory, Bülent Ersoy is in Turkey, I think, the only trans woman at that time. It was, I think, in the 60s and 70s, where she started, who, yeah, is an openly trans woman. Yeah. I was just completely fascinated by her. And also, of course, when I was a child, I was way too little to understand what she was singing about. Actually, her music back in the days, it was like very sad. And it was about heartbreak and about loss. And like, there's a specific music genre in Turkish music. It's called Arabesque. And it's like very heavy. Of course, as a child, I couldn't really understand what she was singing about, but it just still resonated with me. And I found it so beautiful and fascinating. And yeah, it really drew me to her. And that's why I chose also the first record, because it's a record, that my grandmother used to play all the time. And I remember as a child, like, I would get up and it's not a danceable record, but I was like dancing to it and, queening out and stuff. So, and she would let me. She was like, yeah, girl, go.
That's amazing. How was that artist perceived within the culture at that time?
I mean, I think she came up in like the 60s and 70s, which was a pretty liberal time in Turkey, I would say. But still, I mean, I think during that time she was still in her transition, so people really didn't know what she was identifying with. But yeah, I mean, they gave her a lot of shit, definitely. But she is one of the most respected singers and entertainers in Turkey. Now they call her diva.
I'm sure she earned that.
And her voice is actually incredible. I mean, it makes you cry. Like, there's no other singer like her, I would say.
It's the power of music, maybe, when you sing in that way or come from that very deep place of emotion, people connect regardless of how they perceive your identity.
Absolutely, and I was one of them. And, I was a child, fast forward, then, when I listen to her records now, it's like, oh my God, it's like so actually sad, but still nice.
That's interesting to connect to something so sad when you're a kid. Maybe we just like the drama. I liked it too. Still do.
Yes, we live for the drama.
It's weird. It's wild, actually, that you chose like a trans queer artist as your first record, because my second question to you would be around intergenerationality, which sounds very big, but really it's, the idea of having people that are older than you and younger than you, that you have some close bond with. And very often we have that with family members. But sometimes as queer kids, you may not have a queer parent, a queer grandparent, a queer uncle, a queer aunt. Was there any queerness in your family?
Not openly. I think my intuition is very good. I mean, I had 2 people in my immediate family in Turkey where I think they were, and because we were getting along really well and we had kind of like the same interests, and those are also my favorite people in my family. So yeah, never openly, because it's still like surrounded with so much stigma in my culture. But yeah, I would say 2 people, but it was more our little secret, than more like, yes, girl. you know.
Yeah. I mean, there weren't any in my family that I was aware of, and I became very aware of queerness through music and pop music. So when I would see like someone on the TV that was quite queer, I would usually kind of be mesmerized and intrigued and also afraid.
Same.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you remember any artist in particular that you might have seen and had some queer connection to? It may not be an artist, it may be a record or a sound also.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many. You know, it was also very hard for me to choose only 6 songs because, you know, the music head that I am, it's so many things where I was like, oh my God, you know?
Yeah.
Like where I could be like, okay, there is a world outside that I belong to. I think the most rememberable was not so much the song, but the video, but in combination, it was like, pew, it was Too Funky, George Michael, the video. I was like, that's me on the runway, behind the scenes, fagging out.
That was all of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what a choice.
Even today, if I watch it, it just brings up so many emotions, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he was just so amazing at kind of doing something of such quality, but also making it fun. And like, you know, there was an intro to that from The Graduate, I think. Like,
Yeah.
But are you trying to seduce me? Like, there was always this kind of tongue-in-cheek thing. Actually, because I knew that you chose that record, I did a little bit of research, and it's interesting because he did that record after Listen Without Prejudice, which was a very critically acclaimed album, and they wanted to put this out to kind of capitalize on the success of that album, and he refused, and all of the money and all of the royalties were donated to Red Hot and Blue, which was an AIDS charity at the time. So credit to George Michael.
Yes.
So get this picture of you, like, of this queer kid at home, loving the drama, loving George Michael, loving the catwalk, loving the image. When did you start to find community? I think, you know, I like to talk about community because if you grow up in any sense of isolation, it's very easy, I think, to keep yourself isolated emotionally, even if you're with people. And community is what keeps us well. And I think community is not a given, it's a practice. So I'm kind of interested to know when you might have found kindred spirits or other like-minded folk.
It started as early as in German high school. I had one friend who was also queer and became my best friend, basically. I would say those were my beginnings. But I would say, like, my getting into my complete self, I think it was when I moved to New York, I think. It was in 2006. I lived in New York for 11 years. And I think that's when I really got into the things, honey.
She's still in the things.
Yeah.
Wow, 11 years. That's quite a period
Yeah.
of time.
I always say this. I mean, I said this in other interviews also, that New York is really like my place of rebirth, I would say. Like, that's where I really connected with myself. Not that I was disconnected with myself before, but that was like, before that, I was like kind of like in my cocoon. And I feel like in New York, I really like came out.
Were you embracing your trans identity from an early age?
I always knew, I would say I always knew, but of course, if you see other kids around you and the way they are, and if you look in the mirror yourself and the things that you're feeling, you're always, you know, ask yourself, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? You see it more as like, what is wrong with me, instead of like, okay, this is me. So, you know, it was a struggle in the beginning. Definitely, it took me a while, but yeah, here I am.
Yeah. And we're so glad about that. I mean, that's why it's so important that we're talking about this stuff, you know, because for kids growing up and they don't have any positive affirmation of what it is to be different, you end up asking that question, what's wrong with me? Yeah, it's important. These topics are important. Where were you going out in New York?
So I wasn't so much a club kid, I would say. I was diving more into like the ballroom scene basically. So I met like two very dear friends of mine who were like an active member of a house. And yeah, they basically, introduced me to this whole new world that opened up like so many doors up here. Like pew, 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 pew. And yeah, I was more like a ballroom kid than a club kid. I haven't been to like a lot of clubs. I remember, I mean, one club I went to was, and I always also say this in interviews, is like when I first saw Honey Dijon actually play, and I think that was the moment that changed everything for me as far as where I want to go musically, because for the first time I could really like identify and see, okay, I can do this too, you know?
Incredible. I mean, the ballroom scene,
Hi, honey.
hi. The ballroom scene, kind of is in many ways the epicenter of focus when we talk about queer club community. Because, in my experience and from my friends in New York involved in that scene, there is this very active sense of community, of looking after each other, and all the ups and downs and tribulations that come with that. But there is a sense of looking after each other and giving something.
Absolutely. Even though I wasn't an active member of any house, I would go to the functions with my friends, and I mean they're like very protective about their heritage, as they should be, but still I felt really like I belonged, and I was welcomed and also encouraged to like live in my true authentic self, that I couldn't do that before. I was always a little bit, "Ooh, can I?"
Wow, what a magical moment. Amazing.
Yes.
Can you choose a record from that time when you're going out in New York, when you're finding community, when you're listening to Honey?
The Masters at Work, the hard dance.
Classic. Good choice, yes.
And there's a story to it. I mean, this was the first time I think I was at like one of the functions, and I saw legendary Vogue performer Leomi Maldonado Vogue to it, and it just blew me away. It was so powerful. It was so beautiful.
She must
No
be
words.
she must be one of the most YouTube watched Vogue performers ever.
Miss Matrix.
Yes, absolutely. Legendary. I think the last time I was in New York, I went to House of Yes, which was pretty fierce as well. It always feels like a great privilege to be invited in to witness the community and see what's happening there. Have you been back to New York since?
Yes, actually, I just recently have been back. I mean, I haven't been back for like 7, 8 years. So I've moved back to Germany in 2017. And I haven't been back ever since, until just a few weeks ago, when I had like my first official US tour as like now a DJ.
That's so amazing.
Like coming back was not only a homecoming, it was just so many emotions, especially New York. I mean, I did like a whole US tour, also the West Coast and stuff. But like especially coming back to New York, and also it was my last like stop, and then I spent like a whole week there. It was crazy actually to come back.
How beautifully full circle to
Full
take.
circle moment.
Yeah, like to take that kind of those moments of inspiration, take it, do something with it, and come back with it. It's beautiful.
It was insane. Like I cannot even describe how I felt. I mean, the first day I was walking around by myself, and like I was like literally sobbing, because like coming back under these terms, like you said, it felt like a full circle moment. And it's incredible how much muscle memory the brain has, because I still remember like all of the streets, the corners, the places. It's insane. Yeah.
What brought you back to Germany?
It was a personal decision. I mean, I lived in New York for 11 years, and then it was time for me to go back. I was kind of missing my friends and my family, and uh, it was just time for me to go. Also, New York is fucking expensive as fuck.
So the transition then into DJing, it's one of those age-old DJ questions. When did you decide that you might DJ or that you maybe could DJ, or when did you have that thought?
It was a ball where they didn't have a DJ, and they asked me to basically play some tunes on my phone. That's how my DJ career started.
Look at her now.
And yeah, from there, I just really liked what I was doing. I mean, to give a little bit context, I've been, let's say, in the music industry or like being a musician for almost 20 years. I went many different routes. I had a few major record deals as a vocalist also and stuff. So doing this really, I just came into my true self, I would say, as an artist. I don't know, I just felt really comfortable. And yeah, it was pretty much playing tunes on my phone at a ball, and then turning into a bedroom DJ. And then from a bedroom DJ, finally, somewhere here in Europe, actually, my first official gigs.
And did you have the idea that it would be a hobby, or did you want it to be something more than that?
No, I was determined. I was like, no, this is gonna be what I'm gonna do.
It's so nice to hear that, because there's so many stories when we do these, when I do this.
It just flew by.
Just happened.
Yeah. No. No,
just
I
kinda
wanted
happened.
to become a DJ. Like, I really saw myself doing that. I didn't know where it was going to take me, or if anybody was going to take me seriously with the music I want to play and, represent. But yeah, here we are.
When you're making music, are you still using your vocals? Are you still using your voice?
Yeah, I mean, I started producing and composing before I even started DJing. I've also, and I never talk about this a lot because I don't want to brag about this, because it's just part of like a journey, whatever. But I was also writing for other artists, basically, who were out there. The thing is, I was always doing this in the shadows, and I was never acknowledged for that because of who I am, basically. The music industry can be really cruel at times, and yeah.
That's a big one. I had a conversation earlier about, the history, the story of certain clubs being celebrated for certain amounts of times or birthdays, and very often the queer night, which may have contributed a lot in terms of finances, in terms of busyness, just aren't acknowledged. And it has the risk of sounding a bit victimized, and I'm very careful about it, because that's not the road to go down. But I could think of 3 clubs where that was evident, and I think sometimes the queer perspective, or the different perspective, maybe isn't taken as serious, at least within clubs. You can tell me your experience.
There's a few records out there that I was taking part of it.
Name them.
No. Not even about that, It's just, okay, I see you. Okay. I would totally say I was a ghostwriter of that record, but was never really acknowledged. I mean, when you don't know about the music industry and the do's and the don'ts, but you want to put your foot in it, you do certain things. Of course, I was inexperienced. I didn't know a lot. Also, like I said, I mean, I had 2 major record deals, but it never really came to life because executives had problems with me being who I am. That's unfortunately was the downside of this music industry. But still, I still did what I love to do, and that is just making music. It's also different now. I mean, I'm talking early 2000s, It was still a little bit tricky to be fully, openly, full-blown queer or trans.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
I mean, when I started to DJ, I was often I mixed in some queer clubs, and then I was also mixing in some kind of more straight or more regular clubs. And I think I bought into the idea as well that maybe what I was doing was of less value somehow because of my own internal homophobia. And that, I think, has been a really long journey. And I actually had this conversation with Honey also about, when you love what you do and you love the music, that's a great recipe. But when you love yourself on top of that shit, things can really start to happen. And I
Nothing
think
can stop you.
nothing can stop you. Yeah. So were you always, on that journey, we all have good days and bad days, and it is a fucking journey. Sorry to use the word journey. But, on that, what's a gay journey? On that voyage, have you always felt confident in what you're doing, in your abilities?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you listen to my first DJ gigs or first productions, when I listen back to them now, it's like, what were you thinking, bitch? Of course, but it's a process, But I don't hate it. I'm still proud of what I was doing. At least I was, trying to get somewhere, and creating from the heart. Even though now that I'm listening back to some of the stuff, it's like,
it's always
but
about
I think
moving
it's
forwards.
for everyone. I think everyone who does this is like, we all have our cringe moments.
Yeah, and not only from, a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, even now, present. Yes, absolutely.
Can you choose a record from when you started to mix, when you were maybe something that you were playing off your iPhone, or maybe something when you started to mix at home, or from an early gig, for example?
Los Hermanos. That particular album or that particular EP, I remember being in New York and it just blew me away. I have even trouble explaining it because it was so special. I was at a rave and like when they played records of Los Hermanos, I was like blown away.
I can really hear that in your sound. We've mixed beside each other quite a few times in various clubs, and it all makes sense. I didn't know that you lived in New York for 11 years. I can so hear that in your sound, the kind of tribal, percussive. But that record in particular has that tribal, percussive New York thing, but it has this lightness to it as well, where it's like, it's not tribal in any kind of dark way. There's something very kind of hopeful
Sonic,
about it.
light.
Yeah, light.
Opening up. It was insane when I first heard that record. I was like blown away.
We always talk on the podcast about staying well. We live in tricky times at best, and as queer people, we are 3 times more likely to experience the isolation of a mental health issue or addiction. It's not a given, thankfully, but very often, regardless, it's good to talk about this stuff, because we don't go through it alone. And I think as well the intersection of queerness, but also the intersection of being an artist in a super capitalistic world is also fucking stressful.
Yes.
What, if you're comfortable to talk about it, is your experience of your well-being and staying well? And if you have a practice or like a sanity practice that you might share with us?
Just try to stay grounded. That is different for everyone, whatever practices they have. For me, it's just staying humble and, remembering my beginnings, where I came from, how I grew up, what privileges, even though as an immigrant child, I still had growing up in Germany, that others or other colleagues didn't have. Yeah, just remembering where I'm coming from, I think, and where I am now. I know sometimes we tend to forget it because our life is like so hectic. But every now and then, I sit myself down and I try to remember.
I always have this feeling, and I might just be projecting this onto you, but when we meet in clubs, wherever, I always feel like you have a great sense of self-preservation. I always feel like you're on your own team.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say that, definitely. Also, I've been through a lot, and that makes you very resistant to a lot of shit that's going on out there, and keeps you humbled and grounded, and I don't get blinded by the shit that's going on. No.
What music do you listen to when you need a bit of self-care?
I mean, a to-go-to album for me is Raven by Kid Leila, I would say.
I Die.
And me too. Yeah. Obsessed. Solange also. Sade.
Yeah.
Always. Could never go wrong with that.
Yes. That Raven album, do you guys know it from Kelela?
Shout out to Kelela.
It's so beautiful. I love it because I can fall asleep to it and I can dream a bit with it and I can listen to it and I can also think while I listen to it, so I can work while I listen to it. So I kind of can use it in a lot of different...
amazing.
It's so beautiful. Sade often makes me feel a bit lonely as much as I love her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I prefer
It can be a lonely place with Sade.
Yeah, she can be a bit lonely. I think I'm like...
But her voice, it just makes me feel like I'm like a warm cocoon.
And she's a fucking ally. She's turning it out for her trans son.
Yes, absolutely. Shout out to Sade.
We love to see that, Sade.
Whoop, whoop.
It's the final record already. Can you give us a recommendation of something that you're loving now that we might hear when you're playing this weekend? And you have to tell us where you're playing at ADE also.
So ADE, I'm playing at Digital on Saturday for We Still Believe by the Blessed Madonna. And also on Sunday, I'm closing the whole weekend of Raum, which they teamed up with Spiel Raum, La Noche, Maricas.
So 2 tiny shows then.
2 tiny shows. Maricas, what did I say? La Noche, Adonis. Shout out to Adonis.
She is the moment. She is the moment.
No, stop it. No.
And you deserve it. It's so lovely to see you get your flowers.
I always say this when people say this, you are the moment. No, we are all the moment because we're creating it together.
Well, we're enjoying your moment also.
But I would say, recently, I mean, not only recently, but their last EP, I am obsessed with, I hope I'm not bombing the pronunciation. It's Moma Reddy. Amazing producer, amazing records. Period.
Every track on that EP, I mean, there's something electricity. It's fucking mental.
It's insane, right? Yeah.
I'm slightly self-serving in this podcast series because I get to find out all these tracks that I didn't know about. And that EP is absolutely killer.
Yeah, it's crazy.
BASHKKA, it's just so lovely to see you get your flowers, and get all the acknowledgement.
It's been a long time coming, but here we are.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere, bitches.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here today. And thank you to everyone here at the Social Hub. And
thank you
my
for
producer,
coming. Thank
Michael,
you for listening.
And all the best.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Queerly Beloved with me, Cormac. Since you've listened right to the end, I wanted to give you a heads up that for each series of Queerly Beloved, I want to start highlighting the work of a queer charity or organisation worth supporting. For season 2, I've chosen notaphase.org, a charity committed to supporting and uplifting the lives of trans adults through community and joy. You can find a link to Not a Phase at the link in the episode description, as well as playlists for all the music mentioned in today's episode and every episode. While you're there, please do hit subscribe so you don't miss out on my conversations with more talented people. A big thanks to Michael Lane, my producer, to my manager, Melissa Taylor at Tailored Communication, and of course to Amazon Music for their support, and to you, the listener. Until next time, take care of yourself. All the best. Bye.